UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military black projects, false flag alien invasion psyop, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join UFO historian Don Ecker, MUFON State Director for New York Chris DePerno, retired veteran pilot Commander Cobra, and well-esteemed host and researcher Martin Willis as they discuss the latest news and topics regarding UAPs with a no-holds-barred approach on UAP Crossfire.
Our intro just introduced all of us, but we have two special guests tonight, Daniel Sheehan and Kevin Wright. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the show.
Terrific. Thank you, you guys.
Thank you.
So we're having you on tonight, Danny and Kevin, to talk about what you have been working on. And if you could go into that, first of all, most people know who Daniel Sheehan is, but he's been involved in the legal aspect of the UFO phenomenon, trying to get disclosure for many years and working really hard at it. And Kevin Wright, for the last 3 years, has been also working for transparency, basically. And we'll be going into that and talking about these topics tonight. And thank you. If you would, Danny, can you tell us what's going on?
Sure. What's happening is there has, even though the issue of the UFO phenomenon and its potential relationship to an extraterrestrial civilization has been the topic of very intense conversations basically since 1947, when there began to be a lot of sightings, and it was later revealed that these sightings had really started back in July of 1945 around the facility at White Sands at Alamogordo, where they were planning to detonate the first atomic bomb. But there were lots of sightings that the government officials and military people were getting in the 1945 period. But what happened in 1947, in July of 1947, there was a crash of a vehicle of some sort near the military base in New Mexico, at where the 509th Bombing Squadron was housed, which was the only bombing squadron in the world that had access to atomic weapons. And a craft of some sort crashed there in Roswell, and a report was issued immediately by the military press office there that they had recovered a UFO, or flying saucer. And that went out over the AP wires across the world, and there was this huge surge of interest in it. But what happened is virtually immediately, General Ramey, who was the regional commander for the U.S. Army Air Force, arrived at the base and ordered the local newspaper to send a reporter out to take photographs of a weather balloon that he splayed out on the floor at the base and had photographs taken saying, oh, this is what really happened. It was just a weather balloon. But that bulletin that went out over the Associated Press instigated a huge level of concern and interest on the part of people around the country. And there was this entire period that went on from 1947 all the way through the 1950s with literally hundreds of sightings of UFOs. And the United States Air Force in 1952 initiated a purported investigation or study of this phenomenon, and basically ended up effectively trying to dismiss virtually all of these reports as one form or another of simple mistaken identity of some natural event, like swamp gas or flocks of birds or searchlights reflecting off clouds, etc. And it turns out that that was a complete fraud, that investigation. Excuse me. And that there were over 700 of those sightings that they could not explain away. And the bottom line is that this persistent effort on the part of the United States Air Force and the United States military to disparage the reports about UFOs went on and on and on until they had successfully tried to convince virtually everybody in the country that anybody who believed that they saw a UFO was basically mentally ill, and that they should be ridiculed and dismissed. Now, all of that activity was going on at the same time that there was an ever-growing portion of the population that became more and more convinced that this was true. Excuse me. And that and what happened is that the American citizens organized a number of organizations that began direct, immediate citizen investigations of various sightings and events of landing saucers, direct encounters allegedly with the occupants of these flying saucers. And what happened is that this whole event sort of surged in the 1950s and 60s, and then kind of went quiet, even though there were all these meetings of ever increasing numbers of people that kept going to these annual conferences of different UFO organizations. And what happened is, most recently, what's happened in December of 2017 is one of the insiders who had been retained to please, yeah, I'm getting this cold, sorry guys, that one of the insiders who had been appointed by the United States military to supervise a top secret classified investigation, a genuine investigation, purportedly, of the UFO phenomenon, Luis Elizondo, ended up becoming totally frustrated excuse me, over the fact that he was being lied to, blocked from getting out information, etc. And he and another fellow who was working inside the government as the deputy assistant secretary of defense for intelligence, Christopher Mellon, they secured copies of F-18 fighter jet gun camera videos of UFOs and brought them to the New York Times, and the New York Times published them, released those videos on their internet and services, and put out a front page story on December 17th of 2017, revealing the fact that there was in fact this clandestine top secret program going on inside the Pentagon investigating UFOs. And so this began this kind of more recent modern era of a huge surge of interest in the UFO issue, because it was now being acknowledged effectively that the United States Pentagon believed that UFOs were real, and that they were going through this process of trying to determine exactly where they were coming from and who was behind all of this. And what happened is, in the course of that, another deep insider, a Colonel David Grush, came forward. He was the high-ranking colonel in the National Reconnaissance Office, who'd been assigned to this the successor to this top secret investigation that was going on in the Pentagon. And he came forward and reported to members of the Senate Intelligence Committee that we were in possession of an actual extraterrestrial, non-human spacecraft, and that there was this secret program going on to try to back engineer this craft and the technology in it to develop weapons in a special advanced weapons special access program. They also revealed the fact that there was a black budget that was functioning inside the Pentagon, pursuant to which money was being pilfered from appropriated monies for different programs that were being secretly funneled into this budget to both not only recover, but potentially even shoot down UFOs to try to recover their technology. So the United States military and our intelligence community could back engineer that technology to make weapons So this explosive testimony came into the United States House of Representatives on July 26th of this last year of 2023, and immediately the United States Senate on July 27th of 2023 unanimously passed in the Senate Intelligence Committee 17-0 the authorization to promulgate a major piece of legislation that was in effect the UFO Controlled Disclosure Campaign Act, trying to mandate that a campaign be designed by a special committee to provide to the president to undertake the fairly rapid revelation to the public of the information that had been secretly gathered by the military intelligence community over the last several decades, since basically the Roswell event back in 1947. And this bill passed the United States Senate. It was a 64-page bill proposing the creation of a special panel, a board that would be put into possession of every single piece of information that had been obtained by any element of our government, any one of the 6 military services, any one of the 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, any one of the 32 different agencies of the United States Defense Department, and any of the private aerospace corporations that may have been put into possession of any of this technology, had to all be turned over to this panel. And the panel would then facilitate the process of placing copies of this information in the National Archives. And members of Congress who had the appropriate clearances would then be able to get access to this, so that Congress would finally be put in charge of reviewing this information and determining what type of increased oversight needed to be implemented on the part of the United States Congress to oversee these programs about which the military and the intelligence communities have been lying to the Congress for decades, insisting under oath often that there was no such program and that UFOs were not real, and there was nothing to this. So that's happened just recently, the passage of that act. The 64-page act was passed by the Senate. It went to the House side, and the the Republican head of the Intelligence Committee in the House, Michael Turner, basically persuaded Michael Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, to refuse to place that bill onto the floor of the House for a vote, even though an overwhelming majority of the both Republican and Democratic members of the House, and the overwhelming majority of the senators, both Republican and Democrat, wanted to have this bill passed. So what happened is a 24-page bill was passed into law, which all importantly mandates that the military agencies and the intelligence agencies and the private aerospace industry turn over to the National Archives all of the information that they have access to and have ever had access to, dating all the way back to January of 1945. That law has been passed now, and the statute mandates that this information be gathered and turned over to the National Archives as of October 18th of this year, of 2024. Interestingly, coming just about 2 weeks or so prior to the new national election that's going to be coming up in November. So unless the president, in this case, Joe Biden, unless the president takes steps to specifically mandate that a particular piece of information be concealed, every piece of information that is more than 25 years of age, which would, of course, cover the Roswell crash and events subsequent to that, need to be revealed to the public. So there is operational at the present time this extraordinary program that's going on, gathering together all this information and getting ready to make it available to the National Archives, and some substantial portion of it being made available to the public that people don't even know about. There's this entire thing going on, and probably less than 5 or 10% of the people in the entire country know that this is happening. And so what we have done is we are the New Paradigm Institute, which is a 501c3 public interest organization that has offices right on Capitol Hill, has been designated in the Senate bill as one of the groups that is going to be nominating persons to this board of review, except that the board of review had not been approved by the House of Representatives. So what we have is we have a 24-page law that now mandates that it'll all be turned over to the National Archives, but there's no provision in the bill yet for who is going to be reviewing all this information and what kind of a process is going to be adopted for determining how much of this information is going to be made public. And so what we have now is a 24-page version of a significant portion of the 64-page bill, but all the enforcement mechanisms, the power to have subpoena power, the establishment of this board to review all the information, the ability of the board to make preliminary determinations as to how much is going to be revealed to the public, all of that is still awaiting approval by the House of Representatives. And so that what's going on right now is the United States Senate, primarily the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee, are in the process of recrafting additional legislation that is going to be put into the House to get past enforcement mechanisms, hopefully to reestablish this reviewing board to be able to undertake the promulgation of a plan that they're going to propose to President Biden, pursuant to which this information will be revealed to the public. But because of the delay now in getting this board appointed, because the Speaker of the House wouldn't allow the bill to be put onto the floor unless that board was taken out of the bill, that board may not be put into place and become operational until whoever is elected in November, the new president, is put into a position to make the determinations as to how much of this is going to be publicly revealed. So this becomes a major potential campaign issue that no one quite knows about yet, but is in the offing to become a significant issue, because whichever of the two presidents that are competing for the election in 2024 in November, if one of those two candidates agrees to reveal this information more than the other, they may generate more public support. But nobody quite knows about this issue yet. So our New Paradigm Institute is in the process of establishing citizen groups, Citizens for Disclosure, in each of the 435 congressional districts, these action teams that are going to be educating their citizens in the area about the existence of this 64-page bill, and the desire to set up this process of revealing this information to the public. And this is going to be coordinated through the New Paradigm Institute. And we are in the process of organizing a coalition of all of the major organizations and researchers in the field of the UFO studies to participate in giving support to the overwhelming majority of Republican and Democratic senators and Republican and Democratic members of the House of Representatives who want this process to be established. And we're helping to coordinate that through the New Paradigm Institute, and people can contact us at newparadigminstitute.org and be fully educated on what the information is that's presently available. And we're in the process now of providing a university credit course, college education course for full college credit in UFO or ET studies, extraterrestrial studies. This is going to be the first such program for university credit in the world. And we're putting that together now so that people can be educated.
That's great. So what we do here in the format, Danny, is we'll kind of go around and we're going to each, engage possibly with, what you just talked about. And then we're going to let Kevin, say his piece. So Don, what do you think of all that?
Well, okay, first up, you've got to have a deep understanding in the history of what has transpired since the end of World War II. On the heels of the Roswell event, whatever that event was, all right, and the Air Force, the United States Air Force has been consistently lying about it from the get-go. Okay, 3 important things happened before the dust settled from the crash at Roswell. Number 1, the United States Army Air Corps was stripped from the United States Army and turned into a separate military organization. That was number 1. Number 2, something was signed into law that superseded even everything that we did during the Second World War, the Manhattan Project. At that time, probably the most secretive project ever, with the building, the development of the atomic bomb. The National Security Act, in essence, when it is invoked, can do anything up to and including premeditated murder. And there's an excellent suggestion that that has happened with this topic. The third thing that happened, the Central Intelligence Agency was created. And they had their hands in this deeply, all right? Now, flash forward a couple of years to 1952. On 3 weekends, not 2, 3 weekends, Washington, D.C., and restricted airspace all across the Capitol was routinely invaded by these objects, whatever they are, these flying saucers, these UFOs, which incidentally was an Air Force acronym. They took it away from saucer or flying saucer. They said UFO because that sounded a little more official, and we saw them do it again. Now they're UAPs. Same damn thing, okay, but word games. Now, when all of this was happening, one thing became evident. There was something at the heart of this mystery that today is called the core secret. All right, whatever that secret is, the core secret is enveloped by a special access program. A couple of years ago, a guy by the name of Eric Davis, a scientist who was part of the Bigelow NIDS organization out in Utah at the Skinwalker Ranch, deep fascination, curiosity about UFOs, approached Admiral Thomas Wilson, who at that time was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. They convinced him, okay, to make some inquiries. And eventually he was directed to contact an aerospace company out here in California. And he called them up, told them who he was, director of DIA, for God's sake. Okay, they said they couldn't talk to him. He'd have to fly to the West Coast. Now, I don't know this, but I'm an ex-cop. I was a criminal investigator. I'm pretty convinced it was probably Lockheed, but he flew out to the coast. They took him into a skiff. He started asking his questions. The director of security said, wait a minute, I got to see if you're on our bigot list. He pulled out the bigot list, checked. Wilson's name wasn't there. They sent him back. Now, Wilson, incidentally, has denied this across the board. But when an SAP is in play, he's got no choice. He has to lie, because if he doesn't, the bottom line is he can be arrested. He can be charged with a federal felony. Now, what is this secret? We don't know, but we do know this. Whatever it is, the president of the United States of America does not have a need to know. We've heard about this from several presidents, not the least being Obama and Bill Clinton. They tried to find out what the hell was behind this UFO thing. Well, gentlemen, I don't want to go on and on. There are a lot of people here tonight, but the bottom line is this. Whatever secret they are keeping, don't you for 1 second ever believe that they will release that, because releasing it, they are afraid, would lead to chaos across our society, our civilization. Now, take that for what it's worth, but that's my 2 cents.
What do you say to that, Danny?
Well, that's true. that's some more granular, specific information about the general issue that I was talking about. This is true. There's an additional dimension of this, that since I've been meeting with a number of the people that are involved in the legislation, in analyzing what the pushback against the legislation has been, one of the things that they've been concerned about is that there has to be on this board that they're talking about putting together to review the information and make judgments about how much of this is going to be made public. They want to be able to preserve what they refer to as all of the elements of power presently operational on the planet. They want to be able to maintain the entire economic system, the political system, the nation state system, the present banking system. They want to be able to maintain what they view as the elements of present power on the planet, because those in positions of power are afraid that if it's revealed that they've been involved for the past 75 years in lying to Congress and lying to the Congress, in lying to presidents, that the people are going to lose confidence in sort of the elite governing class of our country, and that they'll lose power, and that there will be radical reforms made in the governing structures. For example, this national security state legislation that Don has referred to, the National Security Act of 1947, that created the Central Intelligence Agency, et cetera. they've been engaged in a myriad amount of criminal activity, massive cocaine smuggling, heroin smuggling, political assassinations, overthrowing democratically elected governments, et cetera. And they have been largely responsible for the program to suppress any information about the UFOs in the secret program that's going on about it. And they're terrified that if in fact it's revealed what it is they've been doing, in addition to suppressing information about the UFOs, that they're going to lose power, and that radical steps will be taken to modify the national security state apparatus that is operational in the country right now. So that's an additional thing that they're concerned about. They keep on pretending that what they're really worried about is that, chaos will reign in the world if people realize that there's an extraterrestrial civilization. But the fact of the matter is that virtually everybody below 50 years of age in the country right now, like 85% of people, all believe that there's an extraterrestrial civilization. That now with the mounting of the major spaceborne telescopes, et cetera, the discovery of the exoplanets, even the Catholic Church has now issued public statements saying that it's now pretty clear that much sooner than had been previously anticipated, we're going to discover life elsewhere in the universe. So there's an entirely changed condition here now with the younger generations now about this issue. And there's not a reasonable grounds for believing the rationale that's being proposed by those who are keeping the secret still. So, but the things that Don has pointed out are all true, and a lot more besides that.
Yeah. Thank you, Danny. Cobra.
Danny, a longtime fan of yours, followed your work over a number of years. My career in the military is since I've long since retired. I'm going to give you a situation. I want you to try to help me understand why you think that there's a chance that on 18 October, there won't be continued control of information. And I'm going to simply give you the example that we had the opportunity to finally have the files of JFK's assassination investigation opened up.
Mm-hmm.
and they were not. It was renewed for continued systematic holding of the files. Your thoughts?
Oh well,
Because
no,
I just don't see the atmosphere.
mm-hmm.
Congress, the Senate, they can all play their games on filing pieces of paper and going back and forth. They've had years to tackle this, and it's a game. I just don't see. I don't see it happening.
I think what you're pointing out, Cobra, is that the national security state has basically asserted control over our constitutional government, and that the constitutional government is unable to function. That is a subcomponent element of this issue of the UFO conspiracy and the cover-up, and it's an example of how far things have gone since 1947 in allowing these unelected members of the national security community to assert control over our government, intimidate presidents, intimidate members of Congress. They've removed from office, for example, Senator Frank Church, who headed up the select joint House and Senate committee to investigate wrongdoing on the part of the CIA. In the very next election, millions of dollars of covert money was smuggled in from the Nugan Bank in Australia through 2 South African banks into the United States, and millions of dollars were put into the campaign against the Senator Church of Idaho in his 1980 election, and he was unseated. The same thing happened to Senator Dick Clark of Iowa, who had opposed covert operations in Africa by the CIA, including the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. The same thing had happened to the United States Senator from Indiana, Birch Bayh, who had opposed. They're unseating members of the United States Senate who happen to criticize the covert programs. So it is true, as you point out, Cobra, that there is inordinate amount of power that is being displayed by the national security state infrastructure over the constitutional government. What we need to do is mobilize a massive movement on the part of our citizens. This is one of the subjects that has the most widespread, totally bipartisan support, is the revelation of this information. As you saw, that by 17-0, all the most conservative senators and the most liberal senators in the Republican and Democratic Party all voted to have this done. Out of the 435 members of the House, probably 420 of them all want this done. And yet the national security state and infrastructure is so powerful that they're going to be threatening and intimidating people who threaten to reveal this information. I think that this is something that has to be confronted. And what we need to do is use all of the democratic tools that we have at our disposal, the massive mobilization of the citizens, the public information going to the citizens about all of this matter, and focusing it in a professional way on the Hill with the members of Congress in both the House and Senate to hold hearings. That we now have at least 40 deep inside sources about the existence of this program, and verifying the fact that we're in possession of one or more extraterrestrial non-human spacecraft, and that we know that there is a biological proof now, DNA proof, that the occupants of the vehicles are non-human. We know these things to be true now, and we need to get this information shared with the people. And the people need to mobilize to exercise our power as citizens to be able to push back against this national security state apparatus and amend it in an important way. I think that major amendments of the National Security Act of 1947 need to be undertaken in the face of how far this has gone now, to the ability to suppress the fact that there is an entire extraterrestrial civilization of non-human intelligence coming and going from our planet. That this has to be done. I agree with you, Cobra, that this is going to be a challenge. That's why we have to get off our collective duffs and help mobilize the people, to get the people educated, to have shows like this where we reach out to people across the political spectrum to come forward and to demand the release of this information. And we have the particular statute that has been crafted now by the United States Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee that can do the job. So we have the piece of legislation in place. What we need to do is mobilize the citizen support to get it passed.
Thank you, Danny. Chris.
Thank you, Martin. Mr. Sheehan, thank you first for coming on the show. It's always nice to hear what you have to say. I want to pivot just a little bit and ask you about some of the whistleblowers. You represented Lou Elizondo, correct?
I still do, yes.
All right, sir. So in Politico wrote an article on Lou saying that top officials were trying to discredit him, even call him crazy, and the whole bit. And what we're seeing now is a very upfront attack on all the whistleblowers. David Grush was attacked. Lou Elizondo was attacked. And now we're actually looking at Arrow being possibly a disinformation campaign, according to what Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp says of what happened with Mr. Fitzpatrick in regards to that. So my question to you is, sir, do you see a frontal disinformation campaign by Arrow? Do you think that anything that's coming out of that office is garbage? And the two whistleblowers, Grush and Lou Elizondo, do you find that they're going to be able to stand up to the scrutiny of what's taking place? Now, David Grush, just one other section, David Grush went and said, hey, I can't talk about this, I can't talk about that. And then he goes to New York City and he talks to a bunch of bankers who have no clearance whatsoever. So his credibility is kind of tarnished in that, sir. And I'd like to have your opinion.
Well, okay. Thank you, Chris. The reality is that anybody who tries to contradict the narrative of the national security state apparatus is going to be subjected to these kinds of attacks. And the fact of the matter is, no matter what it is that they're trying to say about Lou Elizondo and about David Grush, the reality of it is whether they reveal more or less information at any given time, whether they get up closer to the line on whether they're talking about stuff that might be close to what is classified and what isn't. None of those attacks on their credibility really go to the basic point of whether they're telling the truth or not. What they've done is they've gone to Congress and presented this information. They've presented corroborating information. They've got 40 of these different whistleblowers that have all given sworn testimony to the Senate Intelligence Committee. We are in the process of assembling all of this substantive information with full documentation, full corroboration, so that they can attempt to attack the messengers all they want. But they're not going to be able to disempower the message itself, because the truth of the matter is that they are in possession of these craft. They are, in fact, and have been, in fact, engaged in this effort to back engineer these things. And they are in possession of bodies that have been recovered from the craft that are non-human. So this is the basic information that is at the core of this thing. And that's the information that's getting ready to come out so that they can throw slings and arrows at people, just like the effort of the Nixon administration to try to destroy the credibility of Daniel Ellsberg, by breaking into his psychiatrist's office and trying to steal the files to show that whether one thing or another that he said to his psychiatrist, they do this all the time. But you have to be able to weather that kind of a storm. But they're weathering the storm right now, in that the United States Congress is in the process of potentially bringing forward more of these eyewitnesses. And these they keep calling them whistleblowers, but what they are is the experts who have direct firsthand corroborated proof of what it is that Grush and Lou Elizondo are saying. So that's what the process is going to be. That's going to happen here. They can chip away and try to attack Lou, about one thing or another that he said to one podcast or he didn't say to another podcast. But that's just chickens kind of pecking at the ankles of a giant. and the giant is moving forward here to reveal this information, and all the henpecking that goes on isn't going to stop that.
What is your opinion of Arrow, sir?
Well, Arrow, it was interesting. The creation of Arrow ended up being, again, a compromise that was enforced by the House of Representatives. The original organization that the United States Senate wanted to create was the Unidentified Aerial and Undersea Phenomenon Joint Program Office, and it was going to be empowered to actually undertake active investigations to determine what the truth was about this phenomenon. And what happened is the House of Representatives, again, under the whip hand of people like Michael Turner, who is the congressman from the 10th District in Ohio, which is the home base of the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where the craft was taken from Roswell to try to back engineer it, that these people are blocking this. But the reality is that this legislation is going to come forward and be passed. In the Arrow office was a watered down version of that. So they didn't have subpoena power. They were not tasked officially with the obligation to investigate any of this information. All they were assigned to do was to be available so that if any whistleblower wanted to come in who had security clearances and wanted to reveal this information to some centralized source, could come into the Arrow office. But the Arrow office was not engaged in leaning forward to find out the information. They weren't investigating any of the information once it had been given to them. They weren't attempting to corroborate the evidence. And what happened is, because of that, the people that were in possession of the information didn't trust them. And so what they did is they kept on going to the Senate Intelligence Committee and providing the information to the Senate directly, rather than going through this side office that didn't seem to be taking the information with adequate seriousness. That's really what happened. And that's why Sean Kirkpatrick got replaced. And that's why at the present time, the Arrow office is not being perceived as really undertaking as aggressive an investigation as the members of Congress really want undertaken. So that's why they're revisiting it to try to put in place this board that will have subpoena power and investigative authority and be clearly charged with the obligation of finding out about the information, not just sitting passively in an office waiting for someone to come through the door to give you information and then just write it down and do nothing about it.
Well, that would be excellent if they actually did that. Danny, the only real whistleblower we have here is David Grush, right?
That we have here?
Yeah, I mean,
we have 40. We have 40 of them that have actually gone to the Senate Intelligence Committee.
No, I'm sorry. The one in like the public eye, like he's the only one that went through. Chris just mentioned Lou, David, and I forget who else. But out of the three,
Chris Mellon. Mellon has made a number of extraordinarily important statements about all of this. There are others who have been cited. The fact is that they're trying to be very careful so that the only the proper authorities who have the proper security clearances are getting this information to start with, and so that, for example, that both Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon, as well as David Grush, had been cleared to say what they said. They were cleared by the United States Defense Department Office of Pre-Publication Security Review. People don't seem to realize that they are not really whistleblowers at all. They aren't revealing public information such as Dan Ellsberg did that placed him in criminal jeopardy by violating his national security oaths. These people have been specifically authorized by the Defense Department to reveal the information that they've revealed. And so now we have 40 additional people who have provided the information to the Senate Intelligence Committee, and there is a process underway by means of which they're attempting to get the Department of Defense to authorize the public testimony of some of these people. And a decision will have to be made by the Senate Intelligence Committee and by the House Oversight Committee whether or not they're willing to bring witnesses on and place them under the protection of the Congress to provide this information publicly whether or not the Defense Department specifically issues an express authorization for them to say this. So that's all the stuff that's happening right now behind the scenes.
Very good. I'm going to let Kevin. I would really like to know what's your involvement with all this, but just to let you know, we've only got about 4.5 minutes before we go into break. So I'll just keep an eye on the private chat. I'm going to put in there when we have to go to break. So
Sure.
Kevin, what's your involvement in all this?
Well, I've been working with Danny and New Paradigm Institute, and what we're trying to do is implement, like Danny was talking before, about a grassroots organization, and we have a media outreach component and a communications component. And what we're trying to do is set up the Citizens for Disclosure, which will essentially be a people's movement throughout the country and eventually internationally, where we're going to advocate for government transparency. And this all sort of is fundamental to the common understanding amongst the people that they have a basic right to know the truth and have an honest government. Polls show that people have all-time or near all-time low faith in government institutions, including Congress, the presidency, the Supreme Court, and then non-government institutions like the media. And so if we campaign on transparency, it's a natural springboard to UAP issues, because we could draw people in, because there's a number of constituencies that will have interest in this subject matter. So we're going to be, drawing people in from around the country to contact the representatives, to organize on the ground, to go to state fairs, to go to public libraries, to do educational events, to organize people that are in their communities, to advocate for transparency and honesty from their government. And that's going to translate into, this UAP issue. And it's going to become an election issue, because people are going to start coalescing around this as they become more informed about it. And that's part of the work that Danny and New Paradigm Institute is doing, which is, the educational component of this.
I think that's a great idea with the education part. And I was totally unaware of that, Danny. I think that's an excellent thing to do. Is the more education we get to people that don't just look on YouTube and find a CGI and then get pissed off about it and don't want anything to do with the whole topic, thinking it's all bogus. But to get clear action out there and education. And how would you actually outreach? We have let's see, 2 minutes really, basically. How would you outreach to these people and gain these people for a grassroots movement?
What this would be very much the same way we did it during Iran-Contra. We set up action teams all throughout the country through different organizations that we had in the Karen Silkwood case, that we organized through the National Organization for Women, through the various churches and synagogues and temples. We organized civil liberties groups. We organized anti-nuclear weapons groups. In the Silkwood case, in the Iran-Contra case, we organized people that were opposed to the drug smuggling, et cetera. What we are identifying is the different constituencies that are natural citizen constituencies that kind of don't always coordinate their activities together, to bring all of these people together in a combined coalition inside each one of the 435 congressional districts, so that they can reach out across the political spectrum, to be able to go to American Legion posts, to do presentations, to go to PTA meetings, to the Kiwanis clubs, to the Oddfellows Hall, to going to the churches and synagogues, to be able to present things to their social ministry offices. We've done this in the past. Where I started working on this particular issue was way back in 1976, right after President Carter was elected. And I was contacted to become part of a major research study that was done at the request of President Carter to investigate the UFO phenomenon and its potential connection to extraterrestrial intelligence. We reached out through the Jesuit order into all of the 54 major religious denominations in that particular instance, to try to get the Soviet Union to step back from the Cold War. and to agree to disassemble the nuclear warheads of their arsenal. Those were things that we've done in the past. We have direct experience over the past 50 years in reaching out through other citizen organizations to mobilize these groups. For example, the Mutual UFO Network has people in virtually every one of the congressional districts around the country who are tasked and trained to go to UFO sightings in landing sites and investigate it and research the people and interview them and keep official records of them. There are people there already who are interested in the subject. What we're going to do is reach out to them to have them each organize a major citizens group in their area and write letters to their editors of the local newspapers, go on their local cable television shows, go to the meetings, hold meetings at the high schools, in their assemblies, go to the local colleges and organize them. This is a major citizens movement that we've all down through the years figured out how to do with regard to particular issues. We've seen issues rise up all of a sudden and put such pressure on the elected representatives that they have to do something about these things, even though they're pressured by some of their major funders not to do it. But I think we know how to do this, and that's what the New Paradigm Institute is doing at the present time. And people, all they have to do is go to newparadigminstitute.org, and they'll hook into all of this information, and they can become part of the courses college credit courses that are teaching all about this, so they can become adequately expert to help organize and chair one of these local organizations, and then bring those people in to getting the same kind of degree of education about the subject. That's the key to this thing. This is citizen education, citizen mobilization, and working in coordination with the people in the Congress, both the House and the Senate, who want this legislation passed. That's what we're going to be doing.
Excellent. Well, I think we're going to be going into break. All right, we're back with special guests Danny Sheehan and Kevin Wright, both who are, it looks like Danny might have had some type of camera issue here. He's trying
I think Danny's trying to give us a virtual tour of his really cool library study right there.
Yeah, maybe he's selling the house. Maybe we'll see this on Zillow or something.
This little thing just
collapsed. Where's Greg? Get Greg back in there.
Yeah.
No, it looks good, Danny. I think you sit
Danny,
down.
you're good.
I think we're okay now.
Yeah, Danny, you're good.
Yeah. So I'm just going to ask Don, you anything to comment on what you've just been listening to in the last bit here with Kevin and Danny?
Well, the political action is definitely vital. The problem, as I see it, I'm here in California. Our culture and society right now is divided more today than I've ever seen it in my entire life, even during the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
People today, they've lost the art of civil discourse. Now, I totally agree with what Kevin and Danny are suggesting. I totally agree with that. But the problem is you still have a large segment that are malcontent, not to mention the national security state, who has no interest in disclosure, in my opinion, whatsoever. So the trick would be to find a common ground to address this. And incidentally, gentlemen, with all the years that I've been involved in this field, and it's been a long time, I got to tell you that for whatever it's worth, I am convinced that more than one extraterrestrial civilization, sentient beings, have been dropping by here. I think there are a number of different groups that have come through here. And this, of course, may add into the core secret. Not all of them are very friendly. And I think the fear is, and at one point there was actual genuine fear back in the late 40s, that we could have been on the verge of an invasion from extraterrestrial beings This had to be a terrifying scenario for the people at that time. And they rightly surmised that that was not then the time to disclose very much of anything. But today it's a lot different. I mean, my God, for 50, 60 years, we've been exposed to things like Star Trek. We've been exposed to Star Wars, all types of alien-themed entertainment. And I think people today are much more willing to accept the idea that there is other intelligence out there. But it's to get everybody working together. I just don't see how the national security state will ever relinquish any control over this topic. I just don't see it.
Well, I would say this, that it was absolutely clear that the national security state people definitely did not want any of the Pentagon papers published. Yet we succeeded in doing that. It's clear that they did not want the Kerr-McGee nuclear facility that was reprocessing all the spent fuels from the nuclear power stations. They didn't want that stopped and shut down, but we did that. They didn't want to cut off the supply of military equipment that was flowing to the Contras in violation of the Boland Amendment in Congress, but we were able to stop that. The reality is that even though the democratic system that we have only yields sort of in the face of major mobilization of the citizenry, otherwise it runs on kind of this automatic pilot of the bureaucracies kind of succumbing to the interests of the national security state.
Well, granted, everything you said, Danny, I totally agree with everything. But we are now talking about something that goes back to the very genesis of our human civilization, Homo sapiens sapiens. There are a hell of a lot of people today that believe that some of these people, these beings that have come to this planet, genetically tinkered with the human race. I was very close personal friends with Zachariah Sitchin. I'm sure you're familiar.
I know
with Sitchin's work.
Zachariah asked me to be his lawyer.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I know Zachary.
His series of books, The Earth Chronicles, details his research going back, well, in essence, 420,000 years ago is when Sitchin believed that these beings that we today call the Anunnaki first came to this planet. Now, there's, oh my God, there's so much to go into there. But the bottom line is we could be talking about something that literally, if became known, would turn humanity upside down. Not that we're not there practically right now,
Yeah.
but this has got to be terrifying to the powers that be. And hey, if you get right down to the very bottom line, how many of those people actually are in on the big secret, on whatever it is they're shielding from everybody else, including military flag rank officers, the President of the United States, Congress, the Senate, the House? I mean, these bureaucrats have, in essence, stolen our republic from us. They've stolen.
Yeah, but it's what we're arguing is that it's not necessarily a permanent situation. The fact is that we still have an adequate amount of liberty and power on the part of the people to rise up and to change the policies of these people. I do believe that there are some major structural changes that need to get made as a result of this. But I think that if we can mobilize and push them back away from this particular set of secrets, that it's going to undermine, and this is part of the thing that they're fearful about. As I mentioned, they're afraid that it is going to undermine the blind confidence of the citizenry in the legitimacy of the governing powers. But the fact of the matter is, how well are the present governing powers doing?
Well, take
You know,
a look at public opinion polls all across the board.
that's right.
My God, I have never seen
That's
I
right.
have never seen the disgust displayed by the citizenry like I have with what's been going on the last 10, 15 years.
That's right.
Don, if I could, I'd like to address like the first part of your question there, which was, about the fractured status of our nation and things. The perfect thing about this UAP issue is the fact that it is entirely bipartisan. We had the Senate Majority Leader of the United States Senate, Chuck Schumer, partnering with a deep red state senator like Mike Brown's from South Dakota in sponsoring legislation, a 64-page Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2024. And it talks about non-human intelligence. It talks about technologies of unknown origin. It talks about any number of things, and not just once or twice, but multiple times. And these are people that are very serious in their profession and their jobs and concerned about their re-elections. I mean, Chuck Schumer is in New York. He's a Democrat, very safe seat. Mike Brown's is in South Dakota, red state, very safe seat. So they're not exactly taking chances here, but they also know that working across the party lines here, that this is an issue that cuts across all the divisions in our society right now. It's not about Donald Trump. It's not about Joe Biden. It's not about the border. It's not about anything else. It's about truth and transparency from our government. And you'll notice that after the House members gutted the UAPDA with the Citizens Review Board and eminent domain and other issues, that Senator Schumer and Mike Brown got on the Senate floor and did what's called a colloquy, which is where they talk back and forth with one another, and they discuss the fact that there are secrets buried within this government that is hidden from the public and hidden from Congress, and they are determined to make sure that this comes to the light of day. And that's where New Paradigm Institute comes in to help educate the people, mobilize them, get their Congress people and their senators engaged, and force this issue into the public. And we're going to make sure that people that are running for office in this election cycle commit to transparency on UAP issues.
Very good. Cobra.
Gentlemen, I'm going to put a small scenario to you for your take. The situation we've been in probably for the last 20 years has continued to deteriorate culturally, regardless of where you land and draw your lines on issues. Now, I would say with everyone that's present here tonight, we are very strong believers in the Constitution. In various professions, we've had to take oaths to defend that. So I've come to the conclusion that a lot of the upheaval that we see going on is not by accident, that it's highly intentional. So here's the question to you both. Is the UAP disclosure so, its magnitude is so high that this is what the deep state is generating to keep it from moving forward? Your thoughts?
I'm not sure I understand, Cobra. The deep state is generating what specifically?
Open borders, uncontrolled amounts of drugs coming into that border, causing unimaginable problems that are going on. Danny, the things that you fought in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, 90s are on steroids, to use a very bad metaphor in this situation. Is our UAP disclosure such a magnitude that's going to reveal the absolute rot that has gone on, that is part of what is driving this upheaval going forward to keep us from getting to that point, to have so many crises constantly coming along the line?
I think what I hear you asking, Cobra, is, will we, in the process of exposing the lengths to which the national security state apparatus has gone to suppress this particular issue? and the lengths to which they've gone to destroy the careers of military officials and political officials, et cetera, to keep this secret, necessarily reveal the deep challenges that the national security state presents to our constitutional order, and reveal the involvement that they've had in generating these particular series of problems that we have. For example, it's clear that a substantial number of people fleeing from El Salvador, Guatemala, in Nicaragua, over the past years are fleeing as a result of massive drug gangs that are functioning there now. And it's perfectly clear, since I interviewed the deputy CIA station chief in Mexico City, Joseph Burkholder Smith, who told me in detail that he was directed by Tom Polgar, who was the CIA station chief, to attend a meeting with some men in the city of Salta in Argentina, who sat right there and told him that they were responsible for the Cali cartel of smuggling the cocaine into the United States in order to generate income so that they could get around the fact that they weren't getting adequate financial support from Congress to support the Contras. And we have record evidence. For example, we uncovered the smuggling of massive amounts of cocaine coming into Florida through a series of shrimp boats called the Refrigerifico de Punta Arenas, and we found the major mansion where they were being stored and being distributed, and it was Gambino's daughter that was coordinating that. We had the address. We had the unlisted private telephone numbers at the house. We had the code names, words you used to purchase the drugs. We knew all of this. I went with a close personal friend of the head of the DEA strike force for the entire United States to his office in Washington and pushed the memo across the desk to him with all of this information in it. And he looked at it and read it and pushed it back to me and said, "Look, Dan, you know what this is, and so do I. I plan to live to see my retirement." That constitutes such a threat to the constitutional order of our country that steps need to be taken to deal with this. I think, as Kevin has pointed out, this is the most widely bipartisan issue that I have ever seen in the 50 years that I've been working in public policy areas. We have meetings with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, sitting in meetings with Matt Gaetz, and others that are all sharing the same view that this needs to be revealed, that they want to work together to cut back against the exercise of the national security state in this case, that we have an opportunity to bring about a coalition of people from the left and the right, from conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats, advocates of different issues. We can bring them all together in this case to confront this national security state bureaucracy. I think that we need to have a joint Senate and House special select committee put together like the Church Committee that was put together back in 1975 and 76 that began to try to explore the excesses of the CIA in that particular instance, where we need to examine what the consequences have become of the creation of the national security state in 1947. I think that this particular issue has such widespread support and can be subject to mobilizing the American public to push back against the secrecy that's been surrounding this issue for all this time, to begin to dig in deeper. For example, it's Danny, important to remember.
Danny, let me interrupt you just 1 second.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to drive at is, do you think that the level, since you're saying that the UAP issue has such widespread appeal, I'm saying to you, because of this, because of the UAP, the significance of this issue, especially if it's disclosed, is why you're seeing some of the conduct that is going on. That these crises that are sapping the conversation and the energy and causing the problems are in response as no other better way to put it, a psyop or an actual operation to keep minds occupied on other crises short term to keep this from getting to move forward.
Okay, I don't think so. I think Cobra, that we can analyze the origins and sources of a lot of this major upheaval that's going on right now. For example, the long-time conflict in the Middle East between the state of Israel and the people of Palestine, the issue of the recruiting of former republics from the Soviet Union into NATO. We can track those things back into periods prior to the December 2017 public revelations by Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon, so that we know that the seeds of these other major, profound disruptions that are going on at the present time predate the latest surge forward in trying to get the UFO issue made public. So I think that even though they seem to be occurring in parallel, I don't believe that the instigation of those other crises that are afflicting us are in fact the proximate result of the national security state attempting to foment distractions to deter us from getting access to the UFO information. I don't think that's because I'm familiar with what the history of those other upheavals are, all the way back into my studying American foreign policy at Harvard College under Henry Kissinger. I mean, I know what the history of these problems are, and they are independent of the particular desire to keep secret the UFO project. In my judgment.
If I could just also just comment real quickly here. I think there's any number of reasons why we see a number of maladies in our society today, whether that's immigration issues, drugs flowing over the border. I mean, a majority of those drugs, like fentanyl, are actually manufactured in China and then shipped to Latin America and then shipped over the border. So that's not really the CIA, I don't think, trying to mask the UAP issue by flooding the streets with fentanyl and then mixing it with these sedatives that are creating this trank that you're seeing in places like Philadelphia and San Francisco and things. I think there's lots of different geopolitical issues going on that's affecting our country and infiltrating our country, but I don't think it has to do necessarily with UAP issues. But at the same time, it is obvious that over the course of the last 80 years that we have had PSYOP misinformation and disinformation campaigns waged against the American public by our government or factions of the government within the CIA, DIA, NSA, etc., to further the to further the cover up of the UAP issue. With the original sin was, of course, Roswell, or perhaps earlier with the discovery of the UAP crash in Italy, the Vatican telling the United States government about it, retrieving it after World War II, any number of things. But the fact remains that they have become very adept at hiding these things. But I don't think that they're manufacturing all these other various crises to hide the UAP issue. I don't think that jives.
Well, I appreciate your take. Obviously, I'm a little bit more suspect at this point that the level, the height, as Don was saying, that disclosure indicates, I think highly motivates people that have lied and continually have lied. And quite honestly, I think, Denny, as you stated, there's people lower down in the process of who are just doing what they think their job is to thwart any kind of disclosure or any kind of release of information. That's not, I don't think that's a very big leap. But I appreciate your take on both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was good. Chris?
Well, first, Mr. Sheehan, let me applaud you for some of the stuff that you've done in your past. And if anybody can get this out, it'll be you. I mean, you've done the Pentagon Papers, the Watergate issue, the Silkwood case, and God knows how many others. So first of all, let me applaud you. It's a great thing. But I have to agree with Don Eckert and Commander on certain, and my focus is what the intelligence community can do and can't do, because one, the intelligence community control the mainstream media. There's no question about that. And without the mainstream media, it's going to be a very uphill battle to get groups together and keep them interested. That's number one. Number two, for the logistics of what you want to do, you're going to need money. And the intelligence communities have their own way of getting their money, as we've seen in the past. And you would have to raise money, and a tough time for people to give money to UFO community stuff. It's just, with inflation and everything else going on, the price of gas and everything, getting money for donation to a grassroots group for UFO is going to be very tough. And I have to say, Kevin, I applaud you for your work and what you're doing, but I do agree with the commander that there are some things that are going on in the world that they're pushing so hard, they want you focused away from this. I remember what Lou Elizondo said. He said a very frightening thing where he said, people in the Pentagon came up to me and said, this UFO thing, we know what it is. It's all demons. Now they come out and they push that to Lou, so Lou would publicly come out and say that. That's a very scary thing. Think about it, is that this whole UFO culture is nothing but angels and demons, and the rapture's coming and everything else under the sun. And that came out of Lou Elizondo's mouth about what he was told at the Pentagon. So maybe there is something that is so frightening that it would cause chaos. Now, being a former police detective, I will tell you, I've been on cases where people thought their neighbors were aliens. Now, this is how crazy this would get if it came out publicly. If something was that frightening, they would go shoot their neighbors because they thought they were aliens. And we had a case where in another state where a person was trying to call Bigfoot, and the guy next to him shot him because he was so scared of Bigfoot. So, Mr. Sheehan, my thing to you, how are you going to get a grassroots going? And I applaud you for it. I hope you do it. But how is your game plan going to be when the intelligence communities practically almost run the state right now, the national state?
Well, one of the things to keep in mind, Chris, is the fact that a substantial majority of the people in our country that are under 40 years old don't rely upon the major mainstream media anymore at all. They don't watch the evening news. They don't watch MSNBC. They don't watch Fox News. They don't watch CNN. They get their news over the internet through shows like this and other sources. So that the fact that the CIA has infiltrated the major mainstream media through Operation Mockingbird in placing the national security reporters inside the New York Times or the Washington Post or at NBC and NBC, that they've miscalculated. The rise of the internet like this, our ability to have this conversation, where the number of people that are going to be listening not only now but later to this show are the means that we have at our disposal right now to take the opportunity here, as long as we still have the degree of freedom that we do have with regard to access to the media here. While we still have the freedom that we do have to move around, to move from state to state and help organize these citizen groups, we have an opportunity here still to mobilize the people. I believe that there's still the possibility of doing this. And the reason I say that is because we've done it before. I mean, people told us when we started talking about, trying to reveal the fact that the Kerr-McGee nuclear facility, that was the facility that was owned by Robert S. Kerr, who was the United States senator from Oklahoma, who in fact was the chair of the Armed Services Committee in the United States Senate, the second most powerful man in the Senate next to Lyndon Johnson. We shut down his entire facility that he had created to use as a cover for smuggling the bomb-grade plutonium to different fascist countries around the world, to the Afrikaner government in South Africa, the government of the Shah of Iran, that they were smuggling bomb grade plutonium to our allies in key areas of the world. The CIA was directly coordinating that. We had such contacts that we were able to get John Dingell, who was the chair of the House committee that was in charge of the security of nuclear facilities and the environment, that to actually task a real-time NSA satellite to monitor the smuggling operation. We caught them engaged in the smuggling of the plutonium from one of the sister plants of Kerr-McGee on tape, doing it. And that was how we got the facility shut down. So that we've got allies in law enforcement, we've got allies in the national security community, we have allies in the military intelligence community.
Well, Danny, here's something else. Who paid a price for that? Did that guy go to prison?
Which guy?
Kerr. Did he go to prison?
Kerr died before this thing was finally resolved.
But you see, that's something that has been obvious to everybody now for years. All right, nobody in government, seemingly the elites, pay a price for their wrongdoing. Very seldom. I mean, okay, I'm not getting political here. I because that's something that at this point there's no call for. But in all my life, I'm going to be 74 this year. Okay, in all my life, I have never seen anybody persecuted like the former President Donald Trump. Now, it doesn't matter if you love the guy or you hate the guy. Myself, I could not. I doubt I could sit down and have dinner with him. But that's beside the point. They have gone after that guy hammer and tongue. But yet, on the other side, several years ago, Hillary Clinton, whom Trump ran against, okay, for president of the United States, do we all remember what she did with all those laptops? She bleached the hard drives, then they smashed the hard drives, thousands and thousands of emails and letters that investigators wanted to see were totally destroyed. And what freaking price did she pay for that? So it's not who you know today, it's who you blow today.
Hey, if I could just
Kevin just said, let me point out that you need to understand that in the Iran-Contra case, for example, we secured the criminal indictment of 6 of the major government officials in the Reagan-Bush administration, including the Secretary of State. We got the head of the CIA in Central America criminally indicted. And we got the special prosecutor to indict these people, and he was in the process of working his way up to indicting George H.W. Bush and his national security advisor, Donald Gregg. We had that operation going. We got all of those people indicted. So and we, as I say, when you close down the central processing facility where they're smuggling the plutonium to other countries. These are major successes that we have achieved. It is true that until we disassemble the structures of the national security state that were set up in the National Security Act of 1947, these people are going to keep coming back and perverting our justice system.
Well, I was going to say, I don't remember H.W. Bush going to prison. Maybe I missed that.
No. That is true. But the people around him got criminally indicted, and that they were in the process of getting this investigation to go forward with the special prosecutor Lawrence Walsh. And a little known fact about a well-known subject, people don't realize that Lawrence Walsh, who was appointed to conduct the independent investigation in Iran-Contra by the special committee of the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., was the chief legal counsel for the law firm whom we defeated in the Karen Silkwood case to the tune of $10.5 million. They reached out to him to appoint him to be the person to investigate the criminal charges that we made against the off-the-shelf enterprise, thinking that he was going to be so pissed off at us for having embarrassed his law firm in Oklahoma. But the reality is it backfired totally because he knew we were right. You know, we took his entire law firm down, you know, in Oklahoma. And so he knew that we were capable of proving the things that we asserted. And that's why we were the first people that he came to when he arrived in Washington, D.C. to get a briefing on what this off-the-shelf enterprise was all about. And we had people all the way up into, you know, Ross Perot, who was on President Reagan's National Security Advisory Committee, was flying me around on his Learjet, me briefing him on the content of the off-the-shelf enterprise. And he hand-delivered the handwritten memo that I prepared directly to Bill Webster, the head of the FBI. What I'm saying to you is that if we understand how the structure is working, we can mobilize the people and focus the people to get changes made. So I don't want people to despair in the face of the kind of overwhelming evidence that is mounting that the national security state is on the very verge of basically subverting our entire constitutional order. We still
Chris,
have time.
Chris DiPerno,
Could I?
hang on, Chris.
I'm sorry,
hang
Kevin.
on.
I cut you
No,
off.
it's all right. It's all right.
Chris DiPerno had a fascinating question for you, Danny, and that is that these things take copious amounts of money. Where's the money going to come from to finance what you're trying to do?
From the citizens themselves. The Karen Silkwood case that we did cost $6 million. We won a $10.5 million judgment that offset all that. The Iran-Contra case cost almost $8 million. And this was raised by direct fundraising that we've done, asking people to send in, you know, $10, $15, $20 contributions. We have a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. People can send in contributions and take deductions from their income tax equal to the amounts that they contribute, so that people can go to newparadigminstitute.org. Just click onto that. And you'll see that there's a donate button there, and people, you know, we had a 15-minute or 15-second ad that we did 2 days ago, which we put up telling people that they could send in contributions to the New Paradigm Institute. And in the first 40 minutes of that being online, there were $2,000 in contributions that came in. So we're in the process of generating a mechanism by means of which regular people and just contribute $10 to $25 and come in, and we can retain people, you know, like Kevin, you know, like other people that we've got as consultants who are deep inside, who have lots of expert information for us to bring this case to justice. And so that we can raise these funds if the people will respond, and I think they will.
Okay.
Well, I commend you for that, and I commend you for the approach.
All right. I'm going to let Kevin.
want to ask Kevin a question if I could. Kevin,
all right, go ahead. I wanted to address your very first question about the media, but go ahead, and then I'll.
Well, Martin had something. Martin, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say Kevin was waiting to talk. But anyway, if we could pay attention to the private chat, maybe I'll put things in there just so we can run it smoothly. I didn't put anything there now, but I mean, let's do that. But go ahead.
My question to Kevin is, how are you going to get the younger people to come to these grassroots meetings? The reason I'm saying that is because I'm the MUFON state director for New York, so I work different meetings all over, and the majority, probably 90%, are retired people. Maybe you get one or two people who are teenagers or in their 20s or 30s to these meetings, but in all honesty, most of the people who are pushing this or wanting this are people on Social Security, that this is their new topic of discussion, and not the younger people. And I think you have to get the younger people in order to do this. So Kevin, what is your game plan for that?
All right, so I think this actually dovetails with the first part of your initial question,
yes,
which was the media aspect of it. So the media aspect of it, like, we would all love the New York Times and Washington Post to run stories all the time about what's going on with this subject, with whistleblowers, with legislation that is, being debated in Congress, like the UAPDA. Unfortunately, they're not doing that. But at the same time, they're also becoming more and more irrelevant because nobody's paying attention to them. These are dying organizations that are begging for you to pay $1 a month for a subscription to their organizations. The people that are actually engaging with people and monetizing it are the podcasts like Joe Rogan and others. And even some of the smaller podcasts that have an audience of 15,000 people maybe are exceeding the viewerships of segments of CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and other organizations. I mean, CNN just had to leave their headquarters of 20 years. They're going bankrupt. These organizations are becoming irrelevant. So to address your second part of the question is, we're going to find these people, especially the younger people, on social media. That's why we're advertising on X, formerly Twitter, on Facebook, Meta, Instagram, on TikTok. So we're reaching new audiences in different ways. And you may not be aware, but about 3 weeks ago, we sent out a press release announcing that New Paradigm Institute was launching a series of 6 ads targeting different constituencies on UAP, educating the public about this subject, and asking them to go to newparadigminstitute.org and go to the call to action which we have, which is for Congress to hold more hearings with whistleblowers in a public realm. So we're reaching new audiences in different ways that sort of sidetracks from the New York Times and these legacy and mainstream medias, because they're becoming more and more irrelevant and nobody's paying attention to them anyway. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I wish you the best for it. It's a good game plan. I'm not sure it'll work, but it's a good game plan.
It's going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we've only started, and we've already had more than 5,000 people join our call to action on this whistleblower issue. And that's without having even spent really any money in the early months of this effort. So, I mean, it's only ramping up, and we have a short window here where we do need people to contribute money. But, there's enormous progress and enormous promise, and a lot of people that are very interested in what we're doing here. And I think that there's enormous promise for success here in terms of what Danny's trying to do and New Paradigm Institute's trying to do overall in this subject.
I think TikTok is a good idea for the young people. So I have a question I'd like to pose to, mostly I think it was you, Kevin, that mentioned it. But all right, we talk about this grassroots level where we're trying to get people to join in and talk with whatever police departments or I heard you say PTA. But what about there's still, even though the New York Times article came out, made things softer, there's still the ridicule factor. I mean, are these people that are interested in this, do you feel that they will go ahead and actually go up into a PTA meeting and address the whole meeting when it comes to this, esoteric topic?
Yes, because I'll give you a perfect example. Earlier in the week, I think it was, or maybe it was last week, there was in the Pennsylvania House of Delegates, there was a meeting with, I forget who the gentleman was, but he was essentially in charge of emergency management for the state of Pennsylvania. And a House member asked him about the UAP issue. This is bleeding into the mainstream. This is becoming a topic which people are actually talking about. They're becoming much more informed about, and they're much more interested in. And the ridicule and the stigma is still there, but it's also decreasing. And if you want to look at people being ridiculed by it, it's the mainstream media, it's the CNNs, it's the Washington Post, but people are no longer paying attention to them anyway. I mean, those are the people that Sean Kirkpatrick and Arrow are reaching out to. But it's a failed effort because this is a situation that's already been, has already escaped, the cage and is running wild in the zoo around the country. And they're no longer paying attention to the zookeeper, which is the government. Or we're now talking to people directly which nobody has done before. Nobody has actually advocated for this issue in a public way in which that Danny and New Paradigm Institute is doing. Nobody's has ever attempted this, and it's going to be successful because, you know, we have a game plan to do it, to educate the public, to mobilize them, and get them to call to action and contact their members of Congress, to get, you know, candidates who are running for Congress, get them on camera, you know, to get them to commit to transparency. You know, this is a widespread effort that's, you know, has a lot of promise.
Yeah,
And it comes up in different places. For example, I was up on the reservation up at the it was Pine Ridge Reservation up in South Dakota, in the Senator Mike Round's own state, and I was in a meeting and with one of the tribal council, and one of the members of the tribal council who was opposing us trying to have an independent child and family services department set up on their reservation, who was opposing it, said, "Oh, you shouldn't listen to anything that Dan Sheehan says because he believes in UFOs." And there was this big dead silence fell over the tribal council. And one of the people said, "Well, wait a second. I believe in UFOs." And another person stood up and said, "Yeah, I do too." Another one jumped up and said, "You know, the fact is our whole tribe believes in UFOs. Our whole tradition is that, you know, we come from the Pleiades and the UFOs are real." And it turns out that everybody in the room except her, you know, came to the defense of the raising the issue of UFOs. So this can happen everywhere now that people are being allowed out of the closet. There's almost every single person you talk to who doesn't view themselves as some kind of an iconoclast of some sort, or some kind of skeptic, you know, as a matter of habit. You know, the minute you start talking about this, they go, "This is really fascinating." You know, I've often wondered about this. You know, I didn't dare say anything to anybody because they were going to say I was crazy. But the reality is, the vast overwhelming majority of people are extraordinarily interested in finding out what it is that we know about this subject. And once you get people like Colonel Grush testifying in open court, or in the open Congress under oath, testifying that we're in possession of a non-human extraterrestrial spacecraft, and that we've got the bodies of the occupants, and we've done DNA tests on them to show that they're not human. I mean, people begin to change their mind about this, and they begin to be not only willing to talk about it, they're extraordinarily interested in finding out about what's going on here. And that's what we're in the process of explaining to them. Tomorrow, I have a 2-hour Zoom that is going to be going on with the people that are taking this master's degree course in extraterrestrial studies, and we're going to be reviewing, for example, the octave of different beliefs about what the origin and nature of the UFO phenomenon is, discussing whether they're more likely to be extraterrestrial from a different star system that have come here, such as was related by Betty and Barney Hill, you know, back in 1967. They had who professed to have a direct encounter with members of a craft who actually drafted a star chart to show exactly where they came from. And it turns out that when you ran it through a computer, it showed that they came from Zeta Reticuli, a particular star system that has a binary star with planets around it. You know, we now know that through the James Webb Telescope. Okay, and we are going to talk about whether they're extra dimensional, in light of the fact that, for example, people don't realize we human beings, Homo sapiens, we can only see 1/3 of 1% of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Right. There's an entire set of other vibrational frequencies that exist in the universe that we cannot see without special equipment now. Okay, and so that we're going to explore this question of whether or not there is some sort of mechanism by means of which these craft can move in some other dimension to come here to our planet. You know, there aren't many people around, such as I, who've sat down and had this conversation with Carl Sagan, you know, from years ago. And the only thing that was keeping him from believing that they were coming here is he said, well, nothing can possibly go faster than the speed of light. that no material can possibly go faster than the speed of light, because the mass of that particular unit of matter condenses and increases proportionally when you increase the speed. The fact of the matter is that was before they discovered the tachyons. Tachyons is a particle that they've now discovered in the CERN particle collider, that there is in fact a particle of mass that travels faster than the speed of light. It actually gets to a place before it left. Left another place. Now, this is stuff that we're just knocking on the door of right now, starting to discover. And these are the kind of technological and physics discoveries that we're going to be making that are all attendant to the revelation of what we come to know about the UFO phenomenon. So that people are extraordinarily curious about this. And if we have a controlled disclosure process pursuant to which this information can be rolled out to the people in a systematic and responsible way, so that it's integrated with the structures of our planet, we can within our lifetimes, a number of the old gray hairs sitting around here, that within our lifetimes we can radically transform the entire geopolitics of our planet, and transcend this extraordinary process that we see now with massive bombings going on in Gaza. People in the Ukraine, knee deep in water, in trenches, shooting rockets back and forth at each other like World War I. I mean, this is preposterous, and the people that are in control of the power structures of the planet right now go, well, we can't possibly do anything that's going to disrupt the power structure on the planet right now. Look how well we're doing. We're not doing that well. That's the whole point. We need to really have some sort of radical intervention here if we're going to get past this kind of level of pessimism that you feel inspired once in a while to express, that, oh, things are completely lost. The national security state is in complete control. I don't think that's true. I think that we have an opportunity here, that I have been involved in doing things that were viewed as absolutely impossible in the past. And we can do it again if all the citizens can be mobilized and can be educated, so that they have the facts and the information and the inside documents that show that this is true. Once you're shown a photograph of a UFO crash retrieval process, such as I saw back in the spring of 1977 in the classified portions of Project Blue Book, that this is real. That this is real. And when I bring this information back to the Jesuit headquarters, and I show it to Father William J. Davis, who's my superior at the Jesuit headquarters, and he reaches in his desk and pulls out an 8.5 by 11 manila envelope and hands it to me, and I slide out an 8.5 by 11 black and white glossy photograph of a UFO that was taken by one of his sister's best friends out of the window of their airplane. And this is all around, guys. This information is all around. All we have to do is provide a means of getting it focused and presented to the Congress, and then mobilize the people to make the Congress perform their constitutional duties. I think we can do that still. I don't think we've lost the fight for our Constitution yet.
I'd like to say something here, just to put this out there. I've said this because I feel this is true. I feel that the government probably knows a heck of a lot more than we do about what's going on, but I don't think they have the full picture. And I don't think that the Air Force is getting involved. The Navy is. The Air Force is getting involved because I really don't know. I think they really don't know whether they can protect us from what these things are. And that's why one of the reasons I think that there is the secrecy, because they don't know everything. And I wanted to hear what you thought about that.
Well, the reality is that they've been lying for so long that it's very hard to tell what the truth is so far. I mean, when they're lying and saying that none of these UFOs are real, it's all a figment of people's imaginations, it's all a hoax, and then they come and tell you that, oh, we really don't know much about them at all. I don't believe that's true. I mean, they've been recovering these vehicles for almost 80 years. that I've interviewed a guy face to face on his deathbed from Project Blue Book, who was one of the operations people in Project Blue Book, that talked all about being present at S4 underground at S4 in Nevada, when his commander was face to face with a live extraterrestrial being who was there being interviewed telepathically by United States military personnel. And they were copying down on cards, little 3x5 index cards, the answers to his questions. You know, it's not that they don't know a lot about this, because they do. But the problem is that they're lying. And when people lie to you regularly and systematically, you can't really believe them when they say to you, well, we don't really know what these things are. You know, none of that's true. None of that's true. They have a huge wealth of information, not only about the craft themselves and how they operate, but they have a wealth of information about the particular species and where they're coming from. I think that's absolutely clear. And we're going to find out. And we're going to find out in short order here.
Anyone on that?
Has that leaked out, Mr. Sheehan? The species, where they're from? Is that leaked out to the public?
Well, there's some information on it. For example, it's now known that the particular star chart, as I mentioned earlier, that was drawn by Betty Hill from Betty and Barney Hill back in 1967, that the star chart didn't mean anything to anybody until they submitted it to the new computers. They submitted it to the new computers, and it turns out that that was clearly a star chart that was drafted from the perspective of Zeta Reticuli. And that was why nobody could recognize it. But once they had the computer that could unpack this thing, and there was no possible way that Betty Hill could have drafted a thing like that. She didn't know anything about astronomy. You know, so that she was told directly that they came from a place which we call Zeta Reticuli. Okay. And then this fellow that I interviewed on his deathbed from Project Blue Book said that one of the little 3x5 cards that they'd written down some of the information that this extraterrestrial person had provided to them, when they asked him telepathically, he said, well, where are you guys coming from anyway? And he told them that he was one of people from a different number of different star systems that were working together to explore the galaxy, to look at the different planets that had developed life, to try to monitor what the state of development was of the life on these different planets. And he said that when they asked him, well, who was in charge? Who is it that assigned you to go do this? And he said to him, well, it's what you people might refer to as God, but it's a lot different than you think. Right. Okay.
That's interesting.
So there's all kinds of extraordinary information that we're right on the brink of finding out about here now. And that there's no reason why we should tolerate some tiny percentage, some infinitesimal percentage of 1% of the people of our planet, you know, keeping this secret from everybody else, and trying to make weapons out of this. You know, that we have a right to know this. We demand to know this. And if we believe in the constitutional principles of our government, we will all participate in mobilizing our people to demand to know this information, because we're at the stage in history, out of all the millions of years of history, that we are now at the process where in the next few years, we're going to be promulgating the major protocols pursuant to which we're going to establish the relationship that we have with an extraterrestrial civilization that's going to impact our human family for 10,000 years into the future. So, I mean, we've got to take this seriously. We can't despair here over the fact that this is going to be hard, or the fact that there's a national security state infrastructure that would prefer to keep control over this. You know, we cannot tolerate that, you know, and that we have a spectrum of people all the way from the right to the left, all across our political spectrum, who are demanding to get this information revealed. So we have the most widespread alliance of our American citizens that I have ever seen in the entire 50 years that I've been working in these issue areas. And you can take it from me based on my own personal experience that I'm convinced that we're going to be able to do this if we all put our shoulder collectively to this wheel and mobilize our people and demand that the United States Congress exercise its constitutional duty to get this information out of the deep state and make it available to our people so we can participate in making this set of decisions that's going to govern our human conduct for the next thousands of years.
Yeah, if we're still around, that is. So just to just to keep that in mind, we get 4 minutes left to the show. So, and we have to hard stop. So I might have to interrupt if someone is in a conversation here. So we're getting right near the end, and so I guess I'm going to ask Kevin or Danny if there's anything kind of in closing that you would like to say that, you know, in the direction you think the future will, you know, what do you think the future will be as far as if disclosure actually does, you know, crack the door and actually open up? Either one, Danny, Kevin?
Well, to be controversial right in the last minute, I mean, I think that it's perfectly evident that what's getting ready to happen now is the fact that with the onset of more and more direct testimony that's going to be coming in about what Donald Trump has done and said, and what he plans to do and say, that this information is going to start sinking into the American public. And even though the election may be close, I think that Biden is going to win. I believe that this administration is going to be the one, therefore, in charge of figuring out how to implement the provisions of this statute that the Senate is in the process of getting ready to pass. If, in fact, the House continues to move forward with the majority getting its way, we're going to get this bill passed in the next administration, which I believe is probably going to be under Biden, is going to have to choreograph this process of releasing this information to our people. And at the same time, we have to start preparing our whole culture for absorbing this and design a new paradigm, a new human worldview that is not rooted in the common assumption of all of our present worldviews, whether they're conservative or liberal or progressive or moderate. Now, we're going to have a worldview that integrates the reality of this extraterrestrial civilization and our place in it. Okay, and we have to design this new paradigm worldview and bring it into fruition. And I believe that's going to happen, and it's going to happen over the period of the next 7 years or so. That's what I believe is going to happen.
I'm optimistic that I think that it will be received more well than in fear. Myself, I mean, just if we gain that knowledge eventually that, you know, we're not alone, I think that's going to be create more of a unity of people, I believe, than will tear us apart and, you know, keep us divisive. I think that, you know, that's just my opinion. I think that it could help, you know, resolve possibly a lot of friction. If all of a sudden we're not alone and we're certain about that, then, you know, we seem much smaller, not so much of ego. And, you know, just my thoughts. But we have just 2 minutes left. Kevin, any last thing from you?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, you know, I think that people that dismiss the power of the people do so at their own peril. I mean, the polls already show that, you know, the public already believes that, you know, that there is an extraterrestrial non-human intelligence, that it is here or has visited Earth, and that the government's lying to them about it. They also demand transparency and have lack of faith in the institutions. So really, the wind is at our back in terms of getting the American public on our side and advocating for this, you know, UAP transparency and disclosure. So we just need to, you know, like Danny said, all put our shoulder to the wheel together and advocate, you know, together for this.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. It's been a real pleasurable night. And we'll be back here next week, UAP Crossfire. Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you.